Jake Harrison stood in the long white hallway of Nexus Prime Station. The walls were made of smooth metal that seemed to glow with its own light. He had never seen anything like it on Earth. This place was bigger than any building he had ever been inside. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it. He carried a black case in his right hand. Inside that case was something the aliens had never seen before, something they would not understand until tomorrow. Jake smiled when he thought about their faces during the test. The door at the end of the hall opened without making any sound. Jake walked through it into a huge room. The room was round like a bowl turned upside down. Seats went up the walls in rows. In those seats sat the strangest beings Jake had ever seen. The Zephyrians looked like they were made of blue glass. Their bodies were tall and thin. Light seemed to shine through them. When they moved, tiny sparkles danced across their skin. Jake had read about them in the files, but seeing them in person was different. The Korthak were very different. They were short and wide. Their skin was gray like stone. They had 4 arms instead of 2. Sharp claws grew from their fingers. Their eyes were black and round like marbles. When they looked at Jake, he felt like they could see right through him. There were other aliens too. Some had green skin with spots. Others had long necks like snakes. A few looked almost human except for their silver hair and purple eyes. They all sat quietly and watched Jake walk to the center of the room. A voice came from everywhere at once. It spoke perfect English but sounded cold like a machine. "Commander Jake Harrison of Earth Defense Force, you may begin your presentation." Jake set his case down on the metal table. He did not open it yet. That would come later. First, he needed to talk to these beings who thought they knew everything about war. "Thank you for meeting with me today," Jake said. His voice was strong and clear. "Earth wants to join the Galactic Council. We want to help protect the galaxy from threats." One of the Zephyrians stood up. The light inside his body grew brighter. "I am High Assessor Vextar. We have looked at your weapons files. Your technology is very old. You still use gunpowder and metal bullets. These things stopped being useful thousands of years ago." A Korthak with gold bands around his arms also stood. His voice was deep and rough. "I am General Tulmos. Your ships are slow. Your energy weapons are weak. How can you help us when you need help yourselves?" Other aliens began to talk among themselves. Jake heard words he did not understand, but their meaning was clear. They thought humans were too weak to matter. They thought Earth technology was like toys compared to their real weapons. Jake had expected this. Earth's leaders had told him the aliens would think this way. That was why he was here. That was why he carried the black case. "You're right," Jake said. "Our guns are not as powerful as yours. Our ships are not as fast. Our energy weapons are not as advanced." The talking stopped. The aliens looked surprised that Jake agreed with them. "But," Jake continued, "there are things about human war that your files do not show. Things that your computers cannot measure. Things that might surprise you." Vextar's light dimmed a little. "What things?" "Your files were complete. We saw all your weapons. We tested them against our defenses. They would not be effective in real combat." Jake walked closer to the table. He put his hand on the black case. "Tomorrow we will have a demonstration. I will show you a human weapon. It is older than gunpowder, much older, but it has won more battles than any gun ever made." General Thulmos made a sound like laughing, but it was not friendly. "An older weapon? Something even more primitive than your guns? This is waste of time." "Maybe," Jake said. "But the Galactic Council rules say that all member worlds must demonstrate their military abilities. Earth requests that demonstration." Vextar looked at the other aliens. They talked quietly for a few minutes. Finally, he turned back to Jake. "Very well. Tomorrow at noon you may show us this ancient weapon, but do not expect it to change our decision. Primitive weapons cannot help in space combat." Jake nodded. "I understand, but I ask that you keep open minds. Sometimes the oldest ways are the best ways." The aliens did not look convinced. They began to leave the room in small groups. Soon only Jake was left standing there with his black case. He thought about what was inside that case. The weapon had taken 5 years to make. It was perfect in every way. The metal had been folded and hammered thousands of times. Every angle had been measured. Every curve had been tested. It was sharp enough to cut through almost anything. It was light enough to move like wind. It was strong enough to last forever. But the weapon was only half of what would surprise the aliens tomorrow. The other half was the man who would use it. Sergeant Kevin Walsh had trained his whole life to fight with this kind of weapon. He moved like dancing and struck like lightning. He could see things that computers missed. He could do things that machines could not copy. Jake picked up his case and walked toward the door. Tomorrow would change everything. The aliens thought they knew about human weapons. They thought guns were all humans had. They were wrong. Tomorrow they would learn that humans had something much more dangerous than any gun. They had warriors, who could turn any weapon into an extension of their will. They had fighters who made the impossible look easy. Jake smiled as he walked down the glowing hallway. The aliens had no idea what was coming. Dr. Amy Collins stood in her workshop aboard the Earth ship UES Valor. The room was full of tools and machines. Metal pieces lay everywhere. Some were twisted into strange shapes. Others were polished until they shone like mirrors. But none of them mattered now. Only one thing in this room mattered. On the table in front of her lay the most perfect weapon she had ever made. It was a sword, but not like any sword that had ever existed before. Amy had spent 5 years of her life making this blade. Every day she had worked to make it better. Every night, she had dreamed of ways to improve it. The sword was 3 feet, long from tip to handle. The blade was curved like a smile. The metal was dark gray with thin lines running through it. Those lines showed where the steel had been folded over and over during the making. Each fold made the metal stronger. Each fold made the edge sharper. Amy picked up the sword and held it toward the light. The blade seemed to drink in the light and give it back in a different way. This was not ordinary steel. This was something new. Something that combined old human knowledge with new human science. "Computer," she said, "run final tests on the blade structure." A voice answered from the air around her. "Testing complete, Dr. Collins. Molecular structure is perfect. Edge geometry is optimal. Balance point is exact. All systems show green." Amy smiled. The computer could measure the blade's physical properties, but it could not understand what made this weapon truly special. The secret was not just in the metal or the shape. The secret was in how it was made. She had used techniques that were over 1,000 years old. Japanese sword makers from long ago had known secrets that modern factories had forgotten. They knew how to make metal that was both hard and soft at the same time. They knew how to create an edge that would stay sharp forever. They knew how to balance a blade so perfectly that it felt weightless in the hand. Amy had learned these old secrets from books and teachers. Then she had made them better with modern knowledge. She understood exactly how the atoms in the metal lined up. She knew which temperatures would create the strongest bonds. She could control the carbon content down to tiny amounts. The result was a sword that should not have been possible. It was sharper than any laser could cut. It was stronger than any armor could stop. It was faster than any computer could track. But Amy knew the sword was still just a tool. The real weapon was the man who would use it. The door to her workshop opened. Captain Lisa Parker walked in. She was the commander of the UES Valor. She had short brown hair and serious eyes. Lisa had been a soldier before she became a ship captain. She understood weapons. "Is it ready?" Lisa asked. Amy nodded and held up the sword. "This is the best work I have ever done. Maybe the best work anyone has ever done." Lisa looked at the blade carefully. She did not touch it. She knew better than to handle a weapon that was not hers. "It looks simple." "That is the point," Amy said. "The aliens expect weapons to look complex. They think more technology always means better weapons. This sword will prove them wrong." Lisa walked around the table looking at the sword from different angles. "How does it work? I mean, how can an old-style sword be better than their energy weapons?" Amy set the sword back on the table. Their energy weapons are powerful, but they have weaknesses. They need power sources. They can overheat. They can be jammed by other electronics. They can break down. This sword has none of those problems. Iwa pointed to the blade's edge. This edge is only a few molecules wide. It can cut through almost anything. The metal is arranged so that it can absorb energy and spread it out harmlessly. Electric attacks will not work on it. Heat attacks will not damage it. What about their armor? Lisa asked. I saw the demonstration targets. Some of those materials are supposed to be impossible to cut. Amy smiled. Their armor is designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles. It is not designed to stop a blade that can find the weak spots that every material has. Every substance has points where the molecules do not line up perfectly. This sword can find those points. Lisa nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand. But the sword is still just metal. How can it be better than their computer-guided weapons? Because it is not guided by a computer, Amy said. It is guided by a human mind. Computers are fast, but they follow programs. Humans can think in ways that programs cannot copy. We can see patterns that computers miss. We can adapt to new situations instantly. The workshop door opened again. This time Sergeant Kevin Walsh walked in. He was a big man with strong arms and quick eyes. Kevin had been training with swords since he was a child. He had studied the old ways and the new ways. He could fight with any blade ever made. Kevin looked at the sword on the table. His eyes lit up like a child seeing a new toy. May I? Amy nodded. Kevin reached out and picked up the sword. As soon as his fingers touched the handle, something changed. The sword seemed to come alive. It moved in his hand like it was part of his arm. Kevin stepped back from the table and made a few practice cuts in the air. The sword moved so fast it was hard to see. It made no sound as it cut through the air. Kevin's face was calm and focused. He was not thinking about his movements. His body knew what to do without his mind having to tell it. Perfect, Kevin said quietly. He made a few more moves, each, one flowing into the next like water. The balance is exactly right. The weight is perfect. The edge alignment is flawless. Lisa watched Kevin move with the sword. She had seen him fight with practice weapons before, but this was different. With this sword, Kevin looked like he could cut through anything. The aliens think our weapons are primitive, Kevin said, still moving through his practice forms. Tomorrow they will learn that primitive does not mean weak. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways because they work. Amy felt proud as she watched Kevin use her creation. The sword was everything she had hoped it would be. But more than that, it was proof that humans had something special. They had the ability to take simple things and make them perfect through skill and dedication. Tomorrow, the galaxy would see what humans could really do. They would learn that technology was not everything. They would discover that a perfect tool in the hands of a master was more powerful than any machine. Kevin finished his practice and carefully placed the sword back on the table. Thank you, Dr. Collins. This is the finest blade I have ever held. Amy smiled. Use it well, Sergeant. Show them what humans can do. The testing room was huge. It was bigger than a football field and taller than a building. The walls were made of black metal that did not reflect light. Strange machines hung from the ceiling like sleeping monsters. In the center of the room stood targets and obstacles that looked impossible to destroy. Sergeant Kevin Walsh walked into the room carrying his sword. He wore simple combat clothes. No armor, no helmet, no special equipment. Just black pants, a black shirt, and boots. The sword hung at his side in a plain leather case. Above the testing floor, behind thick glass windows, sat hundreds of aliens. They had come from all over the galaxy to see this demonstration. Most of them looked bored. Some looked annoyed. A few looked curious. None of them looked worried. High Assessor Vextar spoke into a microphone. His voice echoed through the huge room. Human warrior, you may begin when ready. The test will measure your weapon's effectiveness against our standard defensive systems. Kevin walked to the center of the room. He looked up at the watching aliens and nodded once. Then he drew his sword. The blade came out of its case without making any sound. In the bright lights of the testing room, the metal seemed to glow with its own inner fire. The curved edge caught the light and threw it back in dancing patterns. Kevin held the sword in both hands and took a deep breath. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, he looked different, calmer, more focused. Ready. Computer, activate first target, Vextar commanded. A blue wall of energy appeared in front of Kevin. It was 20 feet wide and 10 feet tall. This was an energy barrier that could stop plasma cannon shots. It could turn away laser beams. It could absorb explosive blasts without breaking. Kevin walked toward the barrier slowly. His steps were quiet and even. The sword moved, slightly in his hands as he walked, like it was alive and eager to be used. When Kevin reached the energy wall, he stopped. He studied it for a few seconds, turning his head slightly from side to side. Then he raised the sword above his head and brought it down in one smooth motion. The energy barrier split in half like it was made of paper. The two pieces flickered and disappeared. In the observation area, several aliens sat up straighter. This was not supposed to happen. Their energy barriers were nearly unbreakable. Computer, activate second target, Vextar said. His voice sounded less confident than before. 3 robot drones flew into the room. They were shaped like metal balls with wings. Red lights glowed on their surfaces. These drones were fast and smart. They could dodge any attack. Their armor was strong enough to survive missile hits. The drones spread out and began to circle Kevin. They moved in patterns that their computers calculated would be impossible to predict. They stayed at different distances and heights. No single weapon should have been able to hit all 3. Kevin stood perfectly still and watched them fly. He did not turn his head to follow them. Instead, he seemed to be listening to something only he could hear. His breathing was slow and steady. Suddenly, Kevin moved. He spun in a complete circle, his sword cutting through the air in 3 precise arcs. As he completed his turn, all 3 drones fell to the floor in pieces. They had been cut cleanly, in half while flying at full speed. The observation area became very quiet. Aliens who had been talking stopped in the middle of their sentences. This human had just done something their computers said was impossible. Computer, activate third target, Vextar said. His glowing body was dimmer than before. A wall of solid metal rose from the floor. This was not ordinary metal. It was made from collapsed atoms, pressed together so tightly that it was harder than diamond. Nothing in the galaxy could cut through this material. Even their most powerful weapons could only scratch its surface. Kevin walked up to the metal wall and placed his hand on it. He closed his eyes again and seemed to be feeling for something. After a few seconds, he stepped back and raised his sword. He did not swing the blade hard. He did not put all his strength into the cut. Instead, he moved the sword in a gentle arc, like he was cutting through water. The blade touched the metal wall and sliced through it like it was soft butter. The cut was so clean that the top half of the wall did not fall right away. It balanced on the bottom half for a moment before sliding off and crashing to the floor. Now the observation area was completely silent. Hundreds of aliens stared down at Kevin with expressions of shock and disbelief. What they had just seen should not have been possible. General Thulmos leaned forward in his seat. His forearms gripped the rail in front of him. "How?" he whispered. But the demonstration was not over yet. "Computer, activate final target," Vextar said. His voice was barely loud enough to hear. The most advanced defensive system in the galaxy descended from the ceiling. It was a sphere made of energy and matter combined together in ways that alien science barely understood. This barrier could stop anything. It had never been broken. It had never even been damaged. Kevin looked up at the sphere as it settled into position in front of him. This target was different from the others. It was not just strong, it was smart. It could adapt to attacks. It could change its structure to resist whatever tried to harm it. Kevin studied the sphere for a long time. He walked around it slowly, examining it from every angle. Sometimes he stopped and tilted his head like he was listening to something. Other times he moved the sword slightly, testing different positions. Finally, Kevin found what he was looking for. He stood in one particular spot and held his sword in one particular way. To the watching aliens, his position looked no different from any other. But Kevin could see something they could not. He made one cut, just one. The movement was so fast and precise that most of the aliens missed it completely. The sword moved in a line so straight it might have been drawn with a ruler. For a moment, nothing happened. The sphere hung in the air unchanged. Then, without any sound or flash of light, it simply fell apart. The pieces scattered across the floor like broken glass. Kevin cleaned his blade on a cloth and put it back in its case. He looked up at the observation area and nodded once more. Then he walked out of the room. The aliens sat in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about weapons had just been proven wrong. A human with a simple sword had destroyed targets that their most advanced technology could not even scratch. High Assessor Vexitar was the first to speak. How is this possible? But no one had an answer. They had just seen the impossible happen, and they did not understand how or why. Down in the empty testing room, pieces of destroyed targets lay scattered across the floor. Each piece was cut so cleanly that the edges looked like mirrors. Each cut was so precise that it seemed to have been made by a machine. But it had not been made by a machine. It had been made by a human who understood that the best weapons were not always the most complex ones. Sometimes the simplest answer was also the most powerful. The aliens were about to learn that humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war, and they were very good at it. Dr. Zalthon of the Crystalline Collective stared at the broken pieces of the final target. His people were known across the galaxy for their scientific minds. They could solve problems that other races could not even understand. But this human demonstration made no sense to him. "Run the analysis again," he told his assistant. "There must be an error in the data." His assistant, a younger crystalline named Velmar, shook her head. "I have run it 12 times, Doctor. The results are always the same. The human weapon cut through materials that should be impossible to cut. The energy readings show no advanced technology, just simple metal shaped into a blade." Zalthon walked closer to the scattered pieces of the sphere. This target had been made by the greatest minds in the galaxy. It was designed to be unbreakable. The energy fields that held it together were stronger than the force that held atoms together. Yet a human with a sword had cut it apart like it was made of air. "The weapon itself is not the mystery," said a voice behind him. Zalthon turned to see Dr. Amy Collins walking into the testing room. The human scientist looked calm and confident. She was followed by Commander Jake Harrison and Captain Lisa Parker. "Then what is?" Zalthon asked. Amy walked to where Kevin had been standing when he made his final cut. She looked at the position carefully. "The mystery is how Sergeant Walsh knew exactly where to cut. Your sphere was not just strong, it was perfect. Almost perfect." "What do you mean, almost?" Velmar asked. Amy pointed to a spot in the air where the sphere had been floating. "Every material, no matter how advanced, has weak points. Places where the atomic structure is not quite perfect. Your sphere had one such point, just one. It was smaller than a single atom, but it was there." Zalthon's crystalline body flashed with surprise. "Impossible. Our instruments cannot detect flaws that small. How could your warriors see what our machines cannot?" "He did not see it," Amy said. "He felt it. Human warriors train for many years to understand weapons and combat. They learn to use all their senses, not just their eyes. They learn to trust their instincts more than computers." Jake stepped forward. "Dr. Zalthon, your people think in terms of technology and measurements. That is good for many things. But warfare is not just about having the most advanced weapons. It is about knowing how to use whatever weapons you have." More aliens began to enter the testing room. High Assessor Vextar came first, followed by General Tholmos and representatives from a dozen other species. They all looked confused and worried. "Dr. Collins," Vextar said, "we need to understand what happened here. Our entire military doctrine is based on technological superiority. If primitive weapons can defeat our defenses, then everything we know is wrong." Amy looked around at the gathered aliens. These were some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They controlled fleets of starships and armies of robots. They had weapons that could destroy planets, but right now they looked like children who had just learned that everything they believed was not true. "Your technology is not wrong," Amy said gently. "It is very advanced, very powerful. But you have forgotten something important. Technology is just a tool. The real weapon is the mind that guides it." General Thulmos clicked his claws together nervously. "But our computers are faster than any organic mind. They can calculate millions of possibilities in seconds. How can biological thinking be better?" "Because," Lisa Parker answered, "computers can only work with information they already have. Humans can work with information they sense, but cannot measure. We call it intuition. The ability to know things without being able to explain how we know them." Amy walked over to the pieces of the energy barrier. "Your barrier was designed to stop energy weapons. It absorbed their power and spread it out safely. But Sergeant Walsh's sword was not an energy weapon. It was something your barrier was not programmed to handle." "The drones were even more interesting," Jake added. "They flew in patterns calculated to be unpredictable. But humans do not predict. We react. Sergeant Walsh did not try to figure out where the drones would be. He simply moved when his instincts told him to move." Zalthon processed this information. "You are saying that unpredictability can be more effective than calculation?" "Sometimes," Amy nodded. "Your computers are very smart, but they think in straight lines. They follow logical steps from one point to the next. Human minds can jump from one idea to another in ways that seem random, but are actually based on patterns we do not fully understand ourselves." Vextar's light was very dim now. "This changes everything. If human warriors can defeat our best defenses with simple weapons, what does that mean for galactic security?" Jake smiled. "It means that Earth wants to work with you, not against you. We do not want to replace your technology. We want to combine it with human knowledge and instinct. Together, we can be stronger than either of us could be alone." A small alien with green skin and large eyes stepped forward. "I am Science Director Kiplan from the Verdant Worlds. I have a question. Can these human fighting techniques be taught to other species?" Amy and Jake looked at each other. This was a question they had been expecting. "Some of it can be taught," Amy said carefully. "The basic principles of balance, timing, and precision can be learned by anyone. But the intuitive understanding that makes a true master, that might be something special to humans." "Why?" asked General Thulmos. Jake thought about how to explain this. "Humans evolved as hunters and fighters. For millions of years, our survival depended on our ability to fight with simple weapons. Our brains developed to be very good at understanding movement, distance, and timing. Other species evolved differently. You developed different strengths." Vextar floated closer to the humans. "Are you saying that humans are naturally better warriors than other species?" "Not better," Lisa said. "Different. Your people are better at energy manipulation than humans are. The Korthak are better at building things. The Verdants are better at growing things. Humans are better at fighting with simple tools and adapting to new situations." Amy pointed to the broken targets scattered around the room. "What you saw today was not just about the sword or even about Sergeant Walsh's skill. It was about thousands of years of human experience with warfare. Every technique he used was learned from humans who came before him. Every movement was perfected over generations." The aliens stood quietly, thinking about what they had heard. Their entire understanding of military power had been based on having the most advanced technology. Now they were learning that there were other kinds of power. "So what happens now?" Zalthon asked. Jake looked around at all the alien faces watching him. "Now we work together. Earth joins the Galactic Council as a full member. We share our knowledge of warfare and tactics. You share your advanced technology with us. Together, we create a military force that combines the best of both approaches." Vextar's light began to brighten again. "And if we face enemies who also have advanced technology but lack your human instincts?" Jake's smile was confident. "Then those enemies will be in for a very unpleasant surprise." 6 months had passed since the demonstration on Nexus Prime. The galaxy was a different place now. Military academies on dozens of worlds had changed their training programs. Young aliens practiced with swords alongside their energy weapons. They learned human concepts like balance and timing and instinct. Sergeant Kevin Walsh stood in the main training hall of the Galactic Defense Academy. The room was filled with the strangest group of students he had ever taught. Zephyrians with their glowing blue bodies held practice swords in their crystalline hands. Korthak warriors gripped the weapons with their 4 arms, trying to understand human fighting forms. Verdants with their green skin and plant-like movements attempted to copy Kevin's fluid motions. Remember, Kevin called out to his students, the sword is not just a tool, it is part of you. Do not think about where to cut, feel where to cut. A young Zephyrian named Luxara raised his weapon uncertainly. Master Walsh, my people do not feel things the way humans do. How can I understand what you mean? Kevin walked over to the alien student. Show me your basic cutting form. Luxara lifted the practice sword and made a careful, controlled cut through the air. The movement was technically perfect, but it looked like a machine had performed it. Good technique, Kevin said. But you are thinking too much. Watch me. Kevin picked up his own practice sword and demonstrated the same cutting form. To the watching students, it looked almost identical to what Luxara had done. But somehow Kevin's movement seemed alive in a way the aliens had not. The difference, Kevin explained, is not in the muscles or the technique. It is in the mind. When I cut, I am not thinking about the steps. I am thinking about the target. I am imagining the sword as part of my arm. A Korthak student named Grokthos stepped forward. But Master Walsh, our computers can calculate the perfect angle and speed for any cut. Why should we ignore that information? Kevin smiled. This was a question he heard often from his alien students. Computers are very good at solving problems they understand. But combat is not just about solving problems. It is about creating new solutions to problems that have never existed before. He moved to the center of the room where training targets were set up. These targets could move and change shape. They could defend themselves and even fight back. They were designed to simulate real combat situations. Computer, activate random combat scenario, Kevin said. 3 targets immediately came to life. They began to move in unpredictable patterns. Some shot energy beams. Others tried to ram into Kevin. All of them changed their tactics every few seconds to stay ahead of any planned response. Kevin drew his practice sword and walked calmly toward the moving targets. He did not rush. He did not seem worried about the energy beams or the ramming attacks. He simply moved forward with steady, confident steps. When the first target shot an energy beam at him, Kevin was not where the target expected him to be. He had moved just slightly to one side without seeming to hurry. The beam missed him completely. As Kevin got closer to the targets, his movements became faster, but remained smooth. He cut through the first target while dodging an attack from the second. He spun around and struck the third target while the second was still trying to track his position. All 3 targets were disabled in less than 5 seconds. The alien students watched in amazement. Kevin had not used any advanced techniques. He had not moved faster than their computers could track, yet he had defeated targets that many of them struggled with even when working together. How did you know where they would attack? Asked a verdant student named Silona. I did not know, Kevin replied. I guessed. But my guesses were based on thousands of hours of training and fighting. When you practice enough, your mind learns to recognize patterns that you cannot consciously see. Dr. Amy Collins entered the YAM training hall carrying a data pad. She had been promoted to Director of Applied Weaponry for the Galactic Defense Corps. Her job was to combine human weapon-making knowledge with alien technology. Kevin, she called, I have the results from the new hybrid weapons testing. Kevin walked over to where Amy stood. His alien students followed, curious about what she had to report. Amy activated her datapad and showed them images of new weapons. These looked like traditional swords and spears, but they glowed with inner energy. They had power sources and computer systems built into their handles. We have successfully combined human metallurgy with Zephyrian energy manipulation and Korthak engineering, Amy announced. These weapons have the cutting power of your perfect blade, Kevin, but they can also fire energy bolts and create defensive barriers. Kevin picked up one of the new hybrid weapons. It felt right in his hands like his traditional sword, but he could sense the additional power humming through it. The best part, Amy continued, is that the weapons respond to the user's intentions. The more skilled the warrior, the more effective the weapon becomes. A computer can use these weapons, but a human master can make them perform beyond their theoretical limits. Grokthos examined one of the new weapons carefully. So human instinct makes alien technology work better? Exactly, Amy said. And alien technology makes human instinct more powerful. Together we create something neither of us could achieve alone. Kevin activated the hybrid weapon and showed his students how to use it. The energy systems responded to his movements, creating effects that the alien engineers had not programmed. The weapon seemed to anticipate what Kevin wanted it to do. This is the future of warfare, Kevin told his students. Not just better technology or better training, but better cooperation between different kinds of minds. Later that evening, Kevin stood on the observation deck of the Academy station. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of worlds docked at the station. Human vessels worked alongside Zephyrian energy ships and Korthak construction platforms. Jake Harrison joined him at the window. Jake was now Admiral Harrison, commander of the new integrated defense fleet. His ships were crewed by mixed teams of humans and aliens. "How are the students progressing?" Jake asked. "Better than I expected," Kevin replied. "They learn the techniques quickly. The understanding takes longer, but they are getting there." Jake nodded. The fleet crews are having similar experiences. Human intuition combined with alien precision is proving very effective. Our response times are faster, and our tactical flexibility has improved dramatically. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the activity outside. The galaxy was changing. Old boundaries between species were breaking down as they learned to work together. "Kevin," Jake said eventually, "do you ever think about what would have happened if the demonstration had failed? If your sword had not been able to cut through their defenses?" Kevin considered the question. "Then we would have found another way. Humans always find another way. That is what makes us dangerous and valuable at the same time." Jake smiled. "The aliens are learning that now. They thought weapons meant guns. We showed them weapons mean warriors." A communication alert chimed from Jake's uniform. He activated it and listened to a brief message. "What is it?" Kevin asked. Jake's expression became serious. "Long-range sensors have detected unknown ships approaching the outer systems. They do not respond to communication attempts and their technology is unfamiliar." Kevin's hand moved instinctively to where his sword would normally hang. "A test of our new cooperation?" "Maybe," Jake replied. "But whatever these visitors want, they are about to discover something important about the galaxy they are entering." Kevin looked out at the mixed fleet of human and alien ships. "What is that?" Jake's smile was confident and somewhat dangerous. "They are about to learn that humans and their allies do not just have weapons. We have warriors who know how to use them. The galaxy had thought it understood warfare. Then humans arrived with their ancient swords and timeless warrior spirit. Now, working together with their alien allies, they were ready to face whatever challenges the universe might send their way. Some lessons, Kevin reflected, were best taught with a sword in hand.